Look, I'm going to level with you right from the start. The Galactic Council thought they had humanity figured out. They really did. They had their fancy algorithms, their probability matrices, their 17,000 years of collective wisdom spanning 462 species. They'd seen aggressive species before. They'd cataloged herbivores, omnivores, carnivores, and that one weird silicon-based species that ate rocks and existential dread. According to YouTube analytics, 99.3% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, you'll help support the channel and never miss fresh content. But humans? Oh, humans were supposed to be simple. Persistence predators from a death world. Apex species. Class 7 threat assessment. The kind of beings you absolutely do not want to anger because they'll chase you across continents just to prove a point. The Council was right about that part, by the way. They just missed literally everything else that mattered. Enter the Vicks. Picture, if you will, 8 feet of chitinous nightmare fuel. Mandibles that could snap titanium. 4 arms, each ending in claws that made surgical scalpels look like spoons. They had vertical pupils that could spot movement from 3 miles away. And a culture that valued honor, combat prowess, and the kind of aggressive territorial expansion that would make a Viking look like a pacifist accountant. The Vicks were what the Council called a young, aggressive species. Only been in space for about 300 years. Still had that new car smell of colonial ambition. They'd been steadily expanding their territory, getting into minor skirmishes with neighbors, making threats, posturing, standard stuff for an up-and-coming apex predator species. Then they met humanity. Now, first contact had actually gone reasonably well. Some trade agreements, cultural exchanges, the usual dance of "please don't murder us, we won't murder you." Both species eyed each other with that special wariness that only apex predators can share. Like 2 tigers meeting at a watering hole thinking, "I could take you, but it would be so much effort." The problem started with a mining colony. Because of course it did. It's always a mining colony. The humans had established a small operation on Kepler 442b, a barely habitable rock that happened to have rich deposits of rare earth minerals. They'd filed the proper claims, paid the fees, done everything by the book. 300 colonists, mostly families. They'd been there for 2 years, building their little community, sending minerals back home, having barbecues under an alien sun, doing that whole frontier thing that humans can't seem to resist. Then the Vicks showed up and declared the planet was in their territory. The humans naturally pointed to the 17 different legal documents that said otherwise. The Vicks naturally pointed to their warships. You can see where this is going. The thing about the Vicks is that they had this cultural concept called Kraxthor, which roughly translates to proving ground, or possibly aggressive job interview. Young Vicks warriors earned their status by participating in raids and territorial disputes. It was how their society worked. You wanted to be someone? You went to war. You wanted to lead? You had better have scars. So when the Vicks commander, a particularly decorated warrior named Thexkor the Unyielding, demanded the humans vacate, he wasn't really expecting negotiation. This was supposed to be a milk run. Scare off some soft mammals, claim the territory, let his son earn his first raid marks. His son. That's the important part. Remember that. Commander Thexkor had brought his offspring, a young Vicks named Krixel, barely into adolescence by their standards. The kid was maybe 60 years old, which for Vicks meant he was roughly the equivalent of a human teenager. All limbs and bravado and that special kind of confidence that comes from never having actually been punched in the face by reality. The human response to the Vicks ultimatum was delivered by Station Administrator Jennifer Zhao, a 47-year-old former Marine who had approximately zero patience for this nonsense. Her exact words, and I'm reading from the communication logs here, were, "With all due respect, Commander, you can take your territorial claims and shove them so far up your posterior that you'll be tasting paperwork for a month. We're not moving. We filed first. This is our rock." Thek's Corps, who had expected pleading or at least fear, was somewhat taken aback. "You dare challenge the Vicks dominion? Your settlement is undefended." "Undefended?" Zhao laughed. It was not a nice laugh. It was the laugh of someone who had seen actual combat and found this particular threat underwhelming. "Sweetheart, every single person in this colony is armed, trained, and extremely tired of your posturing. We've spent 2 years making this place livable. We're not leaving because someone showed up late with a bad attitude." There was a pause. In that pause, you could practically hear Thek's Corps' worldview creaking. "Then we will take it by force. You're welcome to try." And so began the stupidest war in galactic history. The Vicks landed troops. 300 warriors against 300 colonists. On paper, it should have been a massacre. The Vicks were trained soldiers, bred for combat with natural weapons and armor. The humans were miners, engineers, families. Except, and this is the part the Galactic Council's algorithms missed, these weren't just any humans. These were frontier colonists. The kind of people who looked at a barely habitable rock and said, "Sure, I'll raise my kids there." The kind of people who voluntarily signed up for years-long trips through space to live in prefab habs and eat recycled protein because they wanted to build something. These were humans who had chosen difficulty. The first Vicks assault wave hit the main settlement at dawn. They came in with the traditional Vicks battle formation, all honor and visible positioning, because ambush was considered cowardly. The humans had no such compunctions. Turns out mining equipment makes excellent improvised weapons. The Vicks found themselves facing drilling lasers, explosive charges, modified hauler vehicles turned into armored rams, and colonists who had spent 2 years in high gravity doing physical labor. Lieutenant Crixel, young and eager to prove himself, led a squad toward what intelligence had identified as a command center. It was actually the community center, where they held bingo on Thursdays. He kicked down the door, mandibles spread in a war cry, ready to face enemy commanders. He was met by Marcus Webb, a 62-year-old former construction foreman, wielding a modified plasma cutter. "Kid, you just broke my door," Marcus roared. What followed was less a battle and more a very aggressive education in why you don't mess with retired humans who've had their property damaged. Marcus didn't kill the young Vicks. He didn't even seriously hurt him. He just embarrassed him. Repeatedly, in front of his squad. By the time Crixel retreated, he'd been disarmed, tripped over his own limbs twice, and had been lectured about respect for other people's property, while dodging plasma blasts. The battle raged for 3 days. The Vicks kept expecting the humans to surrender. The humans kept expecting the Vicks to get bored and leave. Neither happened. Instead, something weird started occurring. The combatants started talking. It happened during the lulls. You can't fight 24/7 even when you're an apex predator. You need water breaks, food, bathroom facilities that aren't under fire. A Vicks warrior named Skexthor found himself pinned behind the same rubble as a human named David Chang. "This is stupid," David said, taking a drink from his canteen. "Your resistance is honorable but futile," Skexthor replied, checking his weapon. "No, I mean, this whole thing. We're fighting over filing dates. It is about territory, honor. It's about bureaucracy, We literally just got here first. They sat in silence for a moment. Your people fight well, Skekthor admitted. For prey species. Prey species? David laughed. Buddy, you need to check your classifications. We didn't climb to the top of our food chain by running away. This conversation was repeated, with variations, across the battlefield. Humans and Vicks, stuck in foxholes and behind barriers, waiting for the next push, started actually talking to each other. The Vicks learned that humans had pets. The concept baffled them. You adopt natural predators and keep them in your homes? Yeah, they're cute. They could kill you. So could cars, but we still drive them. The humans learned that Vicks sang. Battle songs, mourning songs, songs about their families. Their voices sounded like crystal wind chimes being dragged across gravel, but the emotion was unmistakable. And slowly, reluctantly, both sides started seeing each other as something other than obstacles. Then came day 4. Commander Thek's Corps decided to end this. A full assault all. Warriors, overwhelming force. They would take the settlement and end this embarrassing stalemate. The humans, exhausted and running low on supplies, prepared for what they thought might be their last stand. The assault began at dawn. It was brutal. The Vicks pushed hard, and the humans gave ground reluctantly, fighting for every meter. Buildings burned. The careful community these colonists had built was being destroyed one structure at a time. And in the middle of this chaos, young Crixel saw his chance for glory. The human command center, the real one this time, was in a reinforced bunker at the center of the settlement. If he could take it, capture their leaders, the battle would end. His father would be proud. His name would be remembered. He gathered his squad and charged. They made it halfway across the central plaza before the humans responded. Defensive fire erupted from 3 positions. Crixel's squad scattered, taking cover, returning fire. It was textbook urban combat. Then the plasma mortar struck. Nobody knew who fired it. Probably an automated defense system, or maybe just a lucky shot from a panicked defender. It didn't matter. The plasma round hit the ground 10 feet from Crixel and detonated. The young Vicks was thrown 20 feet through the air. He landed hard, his chitinous armor cracked, one arm bent at an angle that made the humans watching wince. He wasn't dead, but he was hurt, badly, and he was in the middle of a kill zone. Both sides saw it happen. The firing stopped, just for a moment. One of those weird pauses that happen in combat where everyone collectively realizes something horrible has occurred. Crixel tried to stand, fell, tried again. He was keening, a high-pitched sound of pain and fear. He was just a kid who'd thought war was glorious and was now learning, in the hardest way possible, that it absolutely was not. The Vicks warriors began moving to retrieve him. The humans raised their weapons. If the Vicks pushed forward, the fighting would resume with a vengeance. Commander Thek's Corps' voice boomed across the battlefield. "Hold fire! That is my son!" Jennifer Zhao's voice answered from the command center. "Then maybe you shouldn't have brought him to a war." It was a standoff. The Vicks couldn't retrieve Crixel without exposing themselves to human fire. The humans couldn't let them advance without risking being overrun. And in the middle, a young Vicks warrior was slowly going into shock. Everyone waited for someone to make the call, to decide whether the life of one young soldier was worth restarting the battle. Then Maria Santos stood up. Maria was a medic, 32 years old, had 2 kids of her own back in the shelters. She'd spent the last 4 days treating wounded colonists, doing triage in a war zone, watching people she'd known for 2 years suffer and die over a stupid territorial dispute. She'd had enough. She stood up from behind her barricade, raised her hands to show they were empty, and walked into the kill zone. "Santos, what are you doing?" Zhao screamed over the comm. "My job," Maria replied simply. 300 Vicks warriors trained their weapons on her. 300 human colonists held their breath. Maria walked across the plaza like she was taking a stroll through a park. She reached Crixel, who flinched away from her, trying to raise his weapon with his remaining functional arm. "Easy, honey," Maria said softly. "I'm a medic. I'm here to help." You are prey," Crixel gasped. "You cannot—" "I am Vicks. You're a kid," Maria corrected gently. "And you're hurt. Now hold still." She knelt beside him and pulled out her medical kit, started treating his wounds right there in the open, with 600 armed soldiers watching. The Vicks warriors were frozen. This did not compute. Prey species did not help predators. Enemies did not offer aid. This human should be fleeing or fighting, not this. Maria worked quickly, efficiently, stabilized the broken arm, sealed the cracks in his carapace with emergency foam, administered pain medication, all while talking to him softly, the way she talked to her own kids when they were scared. "You're going to be okay," she murmured. "It looks worse than it is." "Well, it's pretty bad, but you're young. You'll heal. Might have some cool scars, though. Your friends will be impressed." "Why?" Crixel managed to ask. "Why help me? We are enemies." Maria looked at him with eyes that had seen too much death. "Because you're someone's baby," she said simply. "And I'm a mom. That's what we do." She finished her treatment and stood, turned to face the Vicks lines. "He needs proper medical attention," she called out. "I've stabilized him, but he should be moved carefully. I recommend a stretcher, support for the arm, and someone should check for internal bleeding." Then she turned and walked back to the human lines. Still, nobody fired. Commander Thek's corps was experiencing emotions he did not have names for. This human, this tiny, fragile creature, had walked into certain death to save his son, had provided aid to an enemy, had asked nothing in return. He had spent 300 years believing he understood strength. He had been wrong. "Cease fire," he roared. "All warriors, stand down." The Vicks lowered their weapons. "Human administrator," Thek's corps called out. "I would speak with you, under truce." Jennifer Zhao emerged from the command center, still armed, still wary. "I'm listening." Thek's corps approached slowly. Up close, he was massive, towering over Zhao by 3 feet. But somehow, at that moment, he didn't feel larger. "Your medic saved my son. She saved a wounded combatant. It's what medics do. She walked into our sights. We could have killed her. But you didn't." They stared at each other. Two commanders who had been ready to fight to the death 5 minutes ago. "I do not understand your species," Thek's corps said finally. "You are predators, yet you save enemies. You are soft, yet you fight like demons. You build homes on hostile worlds and call them paradise. We're complicated," Zhao interrupted. "Look, Commander, I'm going to be straight with you. We don't want this war. We never did. We just want to mine our rocks, raise our kids, and have our Thursday bingo nights without people shooting at us. But we will not be pushed around. We filed our claims legally. This is our home. By Vicks law, we claimed it by strength. By human law, that's called invasion, and we're legally allowed to kick your ass." Thek's corps' mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "We are at an impasse. Seems like." They stood in the ruins of the settlement. Buildings burned around them. Both sides had casualties. And for what? Filing dates and legal jurisdictions. Your medic, Thex Kor said slowly. She has offspring of her own. 2 kids, 6 and 8 years old. She risked her life for my son, while her own children waited for her return. That's Maria for you. This is valued in human culture? Self-sacrifice for strangers? Zhao considered. It's complicated. Some of us are like that, others aren't. But yeah, we generally think it's a good thing, especially for kids. Doesn't matter whose kids they are. Thex Kor was quiet for a long moment. I brought my son to teach him glory. Instead, he learned pain and fear, and that the enemy showed him more mercy than his own ambition. War's a hell of a teacher. Indeed. Thex Kor turned to his warriors. Vicks forces, we withdraw. This world belongs to the humans by right of their courage and their mercy. They have proven themselves worthy opponents and unexpected allies. The Vicks warriors stood straighter. Saluted, they understood. Honor had been satisfied, not through victory, but through recognition. Wait, Zhao called out. Commander, we need to talk logistics. Your wounded need treatment too. And honestly, we could use help rebuilding what we just blew up. Thex Kor turned back. You would accept our aid? Look, you broke it, you helped fix it. That's basic manners. Plus, if we're going to be neighbors, might as well figure out how to get along. And that's how the stupidest war in galactic history ended. Not with victory or surrender, but with a mom deciding that a kid was a kid, regardless of species. The aftermath was, predictably, messy. The Galactic Council freaked out. They had protocols for wars, procedures for territorial disputes, 17,000 years of precedent for how these things were supposed to go. Nowhere in their protocols was combatants become friends and help each other rebuild. The human delegation tried to explain. Look, Maria saved a kid. Thex Kor realized fighting over paperwork was stupid. They helped us rebuild. We're sharing the mining rights. Everyone wins. The council representative, a crystalline being named Tharquix, pulsed with confusion. But the conflict assessment indicated 94% probability of total warfare. The Vicks are classified as aggressive expansionists. Humans are classified as dangerous persistence predators. You should be fighting. Jennifer Zhao, now representing the colony officially, shrugged. Yeah, well, we decided not to. Turns out, when you talk to people instead of about them, they're surprisingly reasonable. But the territorial dispute remains unresolved by traditional means. No, it's resolved. We're sharing. It's this new thing we're trying called cooperation. You guys should look into it. The council eventually accepted the arrangement, mostly because neither species would budge, and nobody wanted to enforce their rules against 2 apex predator species working together. The colony became something unique. Half human, half Vicks. They divided responsibilities. Humans handled the mining and engineering. Vicks handled security and heavy construction. They established joint governance, merged their social structures, and created something entirely new. Young Crixel recovered, though he walked with a limp from then on. He decided he didn't want to be a warrior. Instead, he became a historian, dedicating his life to studying the war that ended with his rescue. His thesis, The Failure of Force and the Strength of Mercy, became required reading for both species. Maria Santos won 17 different awards from various galactic organizations. She accepted none of them. I just did what anyone would do, she kept saying. The fact that nobody else in galactic history had done it didn't seem to register with her. Commander Thexkor and Administrator Zhao became friends. They met monthly for what they called diplomatic negotiations, but what everyone else recognized as an excuse to drink and complain about paperwork. The Vicks concept of Kraxthor evolved. Instead of proving grounds, it became understanding grounds. Young Vicks were sent to human colonies not to conquer, but to learn. The humans reciprocated, sending their young to Vicks worlds. And the galaxy learned something important, something that 17,000 years of protocol and probability couldn't predict. Turns out, when you give apex predators a good reason not to fight, they'll find ways to coexist. Who knew? Well, the humans knew. They'd been doing it for millennia. They domesticated wolves into dogs, turned natural rivals into partners, and built civilizations on the radical idea that working together was better than fighting. They just forgot to mention it in their first contact documentation. 5 years later, the Kepler 442b colony hosted the first galactic festival of cooperation. 3,000 beings from 100 species attended. There were cultural exchanges, trade agreements, and one very confusing incident involving Vicks honey wine and human karaoke that resulted in several new words being added to both languages. On the last night of the festival, they held a ceremony in the rebuilt Central Plaza, the same plaza where Crixel had fallen and Maria had walked into fire to save him. They erected a monument. It showed a human medic kneeling beside a Vicks warrior. The inscription read, in 17 different languages, "Here, mercy proved stronger than fear, and kindness ended what weapons could not." Maria Santos, who still refused all awards, attended reluctantly. She stood beside Crixel, who towered over her even with his limp. "You know they're going to write stories about this for centuries," Crixel said. "God, I hope not," Maria replied. "It's embarrassing." "You saved my life. I did my job. You walked into a kill zone with no protection. I'm a mom. I've done scarier things. You should see me when my kids won't do their homework." Crixel's mandibles clicked in amusement. "I have studied your species extensively. I still do not understand you. Join the club. We don't understand us either." They watched the ceremony together. Humans and Vicks mingled freely now, trading stories and laughter. Children of both species played in the plaza, their games a chaotic mix of human and Vicks rules that made sense only to them. "Thank you," Crixel said softly, "for showing me that strength is not always violence." Maria smiled. "Honey, anyone who thinks violence makes you strong has never tried to give a 6-year-old medicine. That takes real courage." The festival continued into the night. Music played, mixing human melodies with Vicks harmonics into something new and strange and beautiful. Food was shared, stories exchanged, friendships forged. And somewhere in the Galactic Council headquarters, analysts were furiously updating their models, trying to quantify what had happened here, trying to predict when humans would do something this incomprehensible again. They never figured it out. Because here's the thing about humans. The thing that 17,000 years of galactic wisdom missed. The thing that makes them simultaneously the most dangerous and most cooperative species in known space. They are absolutely, completely, thoroughly unpredictable. They will fight you to the death over principles. Then they'll save your life because it's the right thing to do. They'll build homes on planets that are trying to kill them. They'll adopt natural predators as pets and natural prey as friends. They'll create weapons that can shatter planets, then use those same technologies to explore the universe. They'll argue about everything, but unite when it matters. They are walking contradictions. Apex predators with empathy, warriors with mercy, individuals who form collectives, logical beings who act on emotion. They are, in short, exactly what happens when evolution gives a species just enough intelligence to be dangerous and just enough heart to be kind. The Vicks learned this. So did the Council. So did every species that encountered humanity afterward. Some found it frustrating. Some found it enlightening. All found it impossible to ignore. And on Kepler 442b, in a settlement that should have been a Sonducht battlefield but became a home, humans and Vicks built something new together. Not perfect, not without arguments and complications and the occasional diplomatic incident. But theirs. Maria Santos went back to her kids that night, put them to bed, kissed their foreheads, and didn't mention that she'd been awarded another medal she wouldn't accept. Jennifer Zhao filed her reports, refilled her coffee, and wondered what bureaucratic nightmare would hit her desk tomorrow. Commander Thexcor returned to his flagship and looked at his son, who would never be a warrior, but would become something better. And the galaxy kept turning, a little more confused than before, a little less certain of its classifications and predictions, but maybe, just maybe, a little bit better. Because sometimes, all it takes to stop a war is one person deciding that the enemy's child deserves to live. And sometimes, just sometimes, that's enough. The end, but also the beginning. Because humanity was just getting started. And the galaxy had no idea what was coming next. Neither did the humans, to be honest. But that's what made it interesting.